I'm here with Mark McCormick, our Director of Strategic Communications at the ACLU of Kansas. Mark, in addition to doing that, is also going to be our moderator for a big event next week. It's on Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. It's called the Summer of Mercy, Then and Now, Abortion Rights in Kansas. Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. You know, it's always good when I land on the Jesse Show.
I don't know about that.
Long-time listener, you know, first-time caller.
Literally since the beginning. I don't. Awesome. Well, this event, like you were a big part of coming up with the idea and kind of the content for this event. Can you kind of tell us where they came from, and maybe even a little bit more about the Summer of Mercy for those of us who may not have been there or know that much about it?
Well, as you and many of our viewers know, there will be a significant ballot initiative taken up next summer about the constitutionality of reproductive rights here in Kansas. And it occurred to me that we were at or approaching a milestone anniversary of the Summer of Mercy, which was an event in the early 1990s where people who wanted to end abortion descended on the city of Wichita and basically launched an all-out campaign around an abortion clinic to shut it down. They prayed in front of the abortion clinic. They laid down in front of the driveways so cars couldn't enter or exit. They protested, they marched, they held signs, and if memory serves me right, thousands and thousands of people were arrested, bailed out, and then went right back to the protest lines. Wow. Over and over. And I can't remember exactly how long it was, but it was an event that I think fundamentally changed Kansas. It changed this issue, and it changed this issue nationally, and I thought it'd be important to revisit it.
Yeah, that makes all the sense, because you said a big anniversary. It'll be 30 years, right, from the summer. I mean, we're just past the 30-year mark on that. That's one of the things that's so interesting. Even like briefly, like why was Wichita and why was Kansas kind of chosen as the location for that? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I was actually not living here then, but I was writing about this issue as a young reporter in Louisville, Kentucky. There was a man named Randall Terry who led a national organization called Operation Rescue. Operation Rescue was really the moving force behind the Summer of Mercy. And he actually spoke in Louisville one night, and I was the reporter assigned to cover it. And Mr. Terry actually shared with me that events were about to happen in Wichita. He was heading to Wichita. Wow. He was particularly interested because I told him that I was from there, and that's kind of how we got on that subject. But I remember having to cover an event where he was speaking. I had to park maybe a mile away. There were so many cars. And he had really moved that audience. The audience was full of emotion that night. I'd never seen anything quite like it, that kind of fervor. And that fervor actually existed with protesters in Kansas in terms of their intention to stop abortions.
Yeah, well, I think the impact, it's implicit in the idea that you were covering it and involved with it in Louisville, even as it was happening or about to happen in Wichita. And that, couples with the idea, and I think this is a big part of what you were talking about with the event of this ballot initiative that's coming up, which if you want to give us just a little bit more backstory on that or what's exactly at stake there, but it places Kansas once again kind of in the center of the conversation of reproductive rights in the United States, right?
It does. And actually, our legal director, Sharon Brett, who will be on the panel Tuesday night, would be a better person to talk about this. She'd give a much clearer explanation, as she does most of the time.
Sure.
But
Perfect tease too, by the way.
Oh, yeah. But my understanding is that there was a decision by the state Supreme Court here in Kansas. It was called the Hodes decision. And it determined that Kansans had a right to bodily autonomy, and thus, by extension, also a right over reproductive rights. That is being challenged by a ballot initiative next summer, the one that I referenced before. It is meant to overturn the Hodes decision.
Yeah, I think that was a really succinct, and I think just to put another fine point on that too is and this might be obvious to a lot of people, but some people maybe don't quite understand that the idea of a ballot initiative is everyone across the state will be voting on that. So if any Kansas resident, right, has an ability to influence and make a huge decision for rights in the state going forward with that.
Yeah, but it's also being done in a kind of election that is typically much smaller. The turnout is much smaller. What you get in most cases when you plan this kind of a vote are the people who are the most diehard voters, and that's a very small part of the qualified voting population.
That's a really good point. That's a really good distinction. I was more so trying to spur listeners of like, make sure you keep this on your radar because you have a chance to, I mean, this is a responsibility. I mean, when we talk about democracy is a responsibility, but you're absolutely right too of that responsibility only increases with the idea that it is those wishing to exercise that ability have to maybe go outside their way or vote at a time that they weren't otherwise planning or knowing that they could or should. So that's a great point.
It's very important that this is on everyone's radar.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you talked a little bit about Sharon, Brett, our legal director, being on the panel. Can you tell us a little bit more about the other panel members?
Sure. One of the panel members is a man named Stan Finger. I used to work with Stan at the Wichita Eagle. For much of the time that I worked with him, I considered him one of our finest writers on the staff. Wrote with a lot of power, wrote with a controlled kind of an emotion, but he was just a very good reporter, very good writer. He was actually covering the Summer of Mercy.
Oh, wow.
And so I thought it'd be important to get some of his recollections of what it was like as a reporter in the middle of all of that. And we'll also have someone from our national office, Jessica Aarons, who is the Senior Advocacy and Policy Counsel for Reproductive Freedom. She'll be joining us as well.
Yeah, awesome. It's going to be so... I'm really excited for the mix of, I mean, Sharon just in general, every time she speaks, I mean, you and I know better than anyone of just how insightful and brilliant she can be, but the pull from the National ACLU and Stan, who, I mean, we've talked with and about him before. I know you hold him in incredible regard, so the fact that he, it can be on the panel as someone that was on the ground, and is so insightful and can be such I'm excited for that part of the panel as
definitely.
well.
And it bears mentioning, and I'll mention this Tuesday night, but for a long time I've thought of Kansas as America's, as a place that occupied America's social fault line. Mm-hmm. That any social fault line in America somehow ran through Kansas. And I talk about it in terms of the civil rights movement. The first successful student-led sit-in was in Wichita in 1958. There was also a national campaign called the Double V campaign that really began in Wichita. Double V just meant victory at home as well as victory abroad. And it began when a cafeteria worker in Wichita wrote a letter to the Pittsburgh Courier, which was an African-American newspaper that was circulated nationally.
Okay.
And in the letter, he was saying, here we are as African-Americans going to Europe to fight for rights for others when we don't enjoy basic human rights here at home. So let's fight a double-fronted war, a war at home for decency and a war overseas for decency. That began in Wichita. Many people can argue that the Civil War actually began here in Kansas. A lot of us learned about Bleeding Kansas and the run-up to the Civil War, where there was a fight over whether Kansas would enter the Union as a free state or a slave state. That was here. Kansas was also the first state to pass temperance laws, so we entered Prohibition first. We were in the pool there first. All the way up to the early 90s, this abortion issue and the Summer of Mercy. Kansas has always seemed to be a place where we contested a lot of social issues. And I thought it was also fitting that with this vote on the horizon and with the Summer of Mercy in our rearview mirror, maybe we could gain some insights about what we're heading into if we looked at a little history.
Wow. Mark, I love the vision and the way that because I love the through line that you painted there of, once again, Kansas finds itself in the middle of where it's kind of always been and where it kind of belongs, is right on the fault line of history, as you said. That's poetic.
And you know what? We may not always get it right, but it does seem that we try to get it right. Kansas was also one of the first states, if not the first state, to eliminate the Klan by legal means. We basically refused as a state to issue them a charter of incorporation because they were incorporated in Georgia, and yet they were selling robes and all kinds of things here. And we just denied them the right to do business here. And the namesake from my journalism school, William Allen White, the newspaper editor from Emporia, in the 1920s ran a third-person campaign on the platform of getting the Klan out of Kansas. So, as I said, we may not always get it right, but we are always wrestling with these issues that seem to have national importance.
And I feel like that's a poet. I mean, that seems to be an identity that America in its entirety has too. I think when you look at our, as a country, we have so much ugliness and so many mishaps and so many mistakes and malice and all of that. But there is an earnestness of trying to get it right. So I think once again, it just centers Kansas as a representation for the whole country.
Yeah, I like that sentiment. We really are trying to get this right.
Awesome.
And I think, our panel is going to help us, sort some of this out.
Yeah. I'm so excited. I know that, like I said, I know the panelists are excellent. I know your moderation is going to be enlightening and guiding, and it's going to be a great event. Do you have any last words or anything else you want to tell people about what's happening Tuesday?
I'm just hoping that our panelists take up all that room and that you don't really notice me, that I'll have a little opening and I'll have a few questions, but I think we have such a high-powered panel. I'm really more interested in what they have to say and where they take the conversation. And then at some point, after I've asked them a slate of questions, we'll let the audience ask questions too.
That's an important thing to include too. Yeah, you'll be able to message in and ask the panelists your own questions. So, your sentiments on being a moderator is exactly why you're going to be a great moderator. I think you're really going to let the panelists share their information and give them the platform to shine. So.
Oh, Jesse, I bet you say that to all the moderators.
All my bosses, at least. No, it's gonna be a sincerely just incredible event. I've been looking forward to it for a while. So thanks so much, Mark, for sharing a little bit more about it and filling us all in.
Thanks, Jesse.
For everyone that I'm sure is eager and excited to RSVP and make sure that they get into it, it's just aclukansas.org/event. just super easy. There'll be a form there. You can RSVP, get your link, and be ready to go. So
7
awesome.
7 p.m. Tuesday?
7 p.m. Tuesday. Thank you, Mark. Yep, that's exactly right. So awesome. Well, thank you so much again for your time, and looking forward to the event.
Yeah, have me back on the Jesse Show anytime.
I don't know that that's what we're calling it. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.